I'm Sam Hazledine, and today I'm here with Kate Nelson, who is a psychologist who specialises in helping doctors move through burnout and to talk through some really specific tools to both prevent burnout, but the same tools can be applied to move through burnout. So welcome, Kate.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, and so as Sam said, I'm a psychologist and I've worked with many doctors and recently done a few webinars and different group work with doctors through the company I work for, Wombat Health. And it's a topic I'm really passionate about because I think it's obviously our doctors are so important and burnout is so prevalent as well. So really excited to talk about that.
Absolutely, and there's things you can do about it. So this is what we're going to cover. In the previous episode with Dr. Henry Kurtz, we discussed the definition of burnout being the three dimensions of overwhelming exhaustion, of feelings of cynicism and detachment, and the sense of ineffectiveness. But we also covered what it can actually look and feel like, and we know that it can be quite insidious and quite creeping up, can creep up on you. Things like unexplained anger, sexual dysfunction, just checking out from your family, essentially deviations from your norm. Burnout is a tricky one. As I said, it's insidious. It's hard to identify in yourself, as I found with my experience of burnout. So as I found, as we know, as the research supports, the mind is a huge component of addressing burnout. So that's what we're going to go deep on today with Kate to take you through some tools to help. And I want to start though by saying that I think it's really important to understand that our thoughts can either perpetuate burnout or they can be part of the solution. They can be a liability or they can be an asset. And if you're experiencing burnout, there's a good chance they're in that liability category. And if you are young and you're a medical student or you're a junior doctor and you haven't experienced burnout, what will be really useful is to listen to this and to see what could be an asset or a liability to you in the future. So today what we're going to do is cover how to turn your mind into an asset. We're going to discuss core beliefs. We're going to discuss how to identify them and how to change them if required. We are going to cover self-belief, how to build appropriate self-belief as a doctor, both in the areas you've developed mastery and in the areas where you haven't yet. And throughout this, we're going to cover ongoing questions and processes to rewire your brain. Now, we're going to touch on these throughout the conversation, and then we're going to specifically revisit them at the end. So to leave you with some very specific things that you can do and apply in yourself. So Kate, let's start with core beliefs. Let's understand why they exist and what can happen when they start to not serve any longer. So core beliefs, what are they? Why do we have them?
Yeah. And I think, core beliefs are such a good place to start because there are the things essentially that underlie our thoughts, positive and negative. So as you talk about thoughts being, an asset or potentially a pitfall in for everyone, but especially in burnout prevention or response, understanding what those core beliefs are that lay beneath those thoughts can be really valuable. And essentially in the broad picture, core beliefs are things that are developed early in our childhood and shaped by our experiences, our interactions, different sort of cultural and societal influences, family dynamics, and all of those different factors. So to start to identify what those core beliefs are, it does take a lot of introspection and self-reflection. And we can start by examining our automatic thoughts and automatic emotional reactions that we notice in situations, and it's again situations good or bad. And by starting to identify different patterns in thinking, we can dig a little deeper to see what those core beliefs are underlying. So, some general examples of what a core belief might look like. A good a helpful or adaptive core belief might be something like I'm in control, or I am worthy, right? And you can see that that's a really general statement. It's something that's quite general, non-specific to a situation, but in certain situations where we're faced with stress or we're faced with decision making, it can drive the way that we think and act in those situations. And you can see that if you have that core belief, I'm worthy, you're going to approach those situations or approach that decision from that place, even though that's not your conscious thought at the top. Now, if we have an unhelpful core belief, I'm not capable, I'm stupid, right? It may not be a conscious thought, but if it's there at the core, it will drive, our thoughts, our actions. And you can see there, I guess, if you do hold these unhelpful core beliefs, whether conscious or unconscious, you will be more at risk of burnout, right? Because that's going to influence how you think, how you see yourself, how you see others in situations as well. And by tapping into or understanding, what our core beliefs are, it can give us, more power over the conscious thoughts that we have as well, that drive the way that we behave and the way that we feel.
Just as I was listening to you, I was thinking, and it's interesting, my experience as a medical student and knowing medical students and things is, and doctors obviously, is, people from the outside often look at doctors and they go, they're incredibly competent people. How could they not have self-belief? How could they not, feel really good about themselves? But my experience is that ultra achiever, which you have to be essentially to be a doctor, is often driven by a negative self-belief. A self-belief of I'm not good enough, which drives you to study 14 hours a day. Or, a core belief of it has to be perfect, so I'll keep going until I get it there. That level of achievement sometimes or often comes from a feeling of lack, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. And it's such a interesting and valuable perspective that you've shared there, because that's exactly right. I guess those negative core beliefs can sometimes drive us to do good things, as you said. I'm not good enough, so I have to work really hard to be good. And that thought in itself, can sometimes drive why we don't let go of those negative core beliefs, because there's the fear if we let go of, the belief of I have to be perfect, that we'll no longer succeed or will no longer reach our desired outcomes. But that in itself is a fallacy, and it is it's not true. Potentially that could be a factor that has led into you pushing yourself in certain ways, but there are so many other factors, right, that do lead into why doctors are so high achieving, and from whether it's intelligence or interests or passion or goals, all of those things. And that negative core belief or self-belief may get you to a certain point, but you're almost 100% going to experience burnout, or going to hit a point where you can no longer keep going, or not going to feel satisfied either.
These core beliefs, they all exist to serve us, don't they? And my sort of approach to life has always been, and they serve to a point. And there's going to be a point where, and I think it's interesting, sometimes they do serve, and they're a powerful driver. We move away from pain quicker than we move towards pleasure. But everything has its cycle, doesn't it? So say, and as you say, you're almost guaranteed to experience burnout if you have that sort of perfectionist tendency, if you have that I'm not worthy, which is my driver. So, if someone's, so what would be something, how could someone identify and notice that something that may have served them in the past is no longer serving them? And then let's talk about, how do you go about changing them?
There's a few things that sort of pop into mind even as you say that. And I think it's about, so I will talk about how to identify and challenge those core beliefs. But then I just want to touch on, I guess, harnessing, say even like something like perfectionism, or driving yourself to be the best as a mindset rather than it being a core belief. So the core belief can, you need to work at that and truly believe, I guess, as from a psychological perspective and working with, doctors as humans first, doctors second, right? That your core belief needs to be, or you need to be working towards self-acceptance and self-worth and self-love and all of those sorts of things. But you can actually harness this mindset of, wanting to be perfect, but as a mindset, right? And that's more of a goal-oriented rather than a core belief system.
So it's less tied to you and your self-worth, but you can use it as a tool to to sharpen your things. Interesting.
Yes, and understanding, and that being able to use it as a tool means that you would have a good understanding of the fact that it's not defining who you are and what you feel about yourself. But there's other factors like goals and purpose and motivation and interest that are driving your desire to assume that mindset in different situations. Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on that there because I thought that was a valuable point. But then in terms of challenging or identifying those core beliefs in particular, and again, this isn't just restricted to in the medical or clinical setting or educational setting. This is for people worldwide, right? We all have our set of core beliefs. Yeah, just for life in general, and because your core belief won't discriminate situation to situation either. If you're having these thoughts driven by these core beliefs in one setting, there's no doubt that they're happening in other settings like relationships or social settings, home life, and all of that as well. So we really want to start to be mindful and aware, right? And that's the general idea around how to identify our core beliefs. And by doing that, we can do things like journaling, mindfulness to start to notice patterns in our thinking. And by noticing patterns in your thinking, you can start to go, hey, what's laying underneath that? Why am I thinking like that? And it's really going through that process of asking why again, until you kind of get to that reoccurring theme across thoughts. So in a clinical setting, what that would look like with a client, I might notice that they are really upset, right, with feedback they've received. And they're having these thoughts of, is this career even right for me? Why does this always happen to me? I should have expected this. I knew I wasn't good enough. And we start to explore their thoughts and ask questions, and then eventually can sort of come to this understanding that there may be a core belief of I'm not worthy, right? And that's a very sort of general, vague example there. But that process is called cognitive restructuring. And so that's something that that we can all do. As I said, I do it in a clinical supported way with clients. But what that would look like to start with is just keeping a bit of a journal of your thoughts and noticing, I guess, first the situations that may trigger a thought and a feeling, and what that thought leads into, and asking questions about that thought and why it's there, why it matters. So it's really examining those thoughts to start to uncover those beliefs and looking at that, as I said, in different situations as well to see if there's any sort of pattern underlying there. And once we start to see these patterns, and if we do start to see some unhelpful patterns, whether it's, I'm not worthy, or I can't stand up for myself, or I'm not in control, or I'm not good enough, whatever that general pattern is, we can start to examine the evidence for or against that belief, right? And as I said, those beliefs are developed from a really early age and reinforced through different factors over time. And there may be evidence that has contributed to the development of that belief, but there's 100% guarantee there's evidence against it as well, right? And there's more to the story. So by examining that evidence and at the time, looking at the evidence that we've got, but then also coming up with new evidence, right? So each time something happens would go against that belief. So I'm not good enough. And each time you have an achievement, keeping a log of that, right? You're directly targeting that core belief and breaking it down, right? And challenging it. Exactly right. Yes. So that's really general sort of introduction to core beliefs. I guess how to harness some of the motivating factors that might come, and how to start to identify what they might be for yourself and challenge or restructure them when you do identify them.
Makes total sense. I mean, it's it's no longer serving. So it's like you got to go deep. You got to get past the symptoms first to get to the cause, don't you? So core belief is like a root cause. So you've got to go the why, get down to it, and then a big part of it sometimes is shine the light on it, isn't it? If you've shined the light on it and you can see it, then you have the opportunity to challenge it and to rewire something new, I guess. And we're going to talk about that later on, aren't we? Actually, how do you actually introduce a new core belief? So we'll loop back in on that. So core beliefs. Let's talk about how you'd rewire it now. So so part of it is you've shined the light, you understand what it is, you've challenged it cognitively. How do you now change it? How do you now introduce something new?
I think that it does come back to building the evidence. It really relies a lot on the evidence, right? Because again, this core belief, it's something that whether consciously or unconsciously you truly believe, right? And so you have to draw on evidence that you already have and intentionally reinforce that. And that's each time then, you are having, a negative thought in a situation, being able to challenge that as well, because that's going to rewire the pathway that's going to then target the core belief at its core, or the belief you hold at your core. And yeah, I think through you can even do things like behavioural experimentation with yourself. And again, this is something that I would do with clients to start to challenge core beliefs or gather evidence against a core belief, is setting yourself up in situations that you might be fearful of because they are challenging that core belief, but ultimately gaining evidence against that belief. Yeah, and really coming up with this evidence pool so when it does arise, you can break it down. And each time you're challenging it and breaking it down, you're restructuring it. And ultimately over time, so it isn't something that's just an aha moment. It can be a real aha moment of, I find that a lot with clients, if there's, I guess we can be working through their thoughts at a surface level and not much is changing, or they're not really buying into this whole process of changing their thoughts, or quite resistant to whatever we're doing. As we start to go deeper and deeper and deeper and identify this core belief, I'm not worthy, that can be an aha moment. Even noticing that is what's driving all of these thoughts and then, these behaviors. Yeah. And so that can be an aha moment, but starting to break that down can take time.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess you've lived with it for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So shining the light on it is one thing. Aha, I've got it. Now you got to rewire it, don't you? Now it's actually, as you say, notice the trigger, notice the thought that comes out, pick a new thought. Look for evidence. Like, this is a process, and I think that's a really useful thing for a doctor listening to realize is this is not a point in time. This is like, I'm going to rewire my brain, and so don't feel terrible about the fact that it hasn't happened instantly.
Yes, exactly. And funnily enough, I guess some of the core beliefs you might hold might make you feel bad about it not happening instantly, right? Yeah. So I think, it's really important to understand that it isn't an overnight thing. It does take practice and intentional practice. Once you realize that that's not enough, you do have to intentionally work at it. And that's where, having sort of, I guess, written exercises. So taking a step out of your mind into exercises like being able to journal, being able to come up with, I guess, a sort of like a thought diary. So noticing these thoughts and your patterns, noticing how those thoughts are then influencing, your behaviours, noticing the patterns that are underlying those thoughts, and starting to then, I guess, coming up even with the alternate core belief. What is the version that's a good core belief? So if it's I'm not worthy, the positive or helpful core belief would be I am worthy, right? It's pretty simple.
It's not rocket science, is it? It's the opposite sometimes.
Yeah. And so then just being able to put that sort of cap on in when you're feeling, whether it's overwhelmed, disappointed in yourself, or whatever that situation is. If you're able to see this through the lens of I am worthy, how would you think? How would you feel? How would you act? And coming up with some ideas there. Is it possible to choose one of those thoughts right now? Is it possible to act in one of those ways right now? You might not feel it straight away, but if you can, I guess that's the power of our mind, is we can control our actions even when we are feeling certain ways. So yeah, coming up with things that are in line with the ideal core belief and being able to act in those ways as we're learning to hold that new belief, it can be another really important strategy.
Brilliant. So core belief, I think we've gone pretty deep on that, and it leads very well into the next section, which is talking about self-belief, which is obviously critical for doctors. And there's often a big what's the right word, jolt to that when you move from medical student to doctor. And we get our self-belief can get called into question. So let's talk about self-belief. Let's talk about it.
Definitely. And I think it ties in a lot with our core beliefs, right? Some of those underlying core beliefs can determine what we think and feel about ourselves and our self-belief, but definitely more so in the medical setting as well, and going from studies, as you said, into being a doctor, there can be a big jolt there. And self-belief and confidence are really tied with having feelings of competence, being effective or effectively coping with stressful situations, having a strong self-esteem, feeling resilient, all of those things. And all of those things also tend to suffer when you're feeling burnt out as well, right? So there's factors like I guess strengthening, your resilience through, a big part of resilience is even connectedness, right? Being connected to those around you. And that can be one component of your self-belief, your resilience. But also, I guess, the way that I would like to look at self-belief today is around the mastery mindset. So the mastery mindset being having goals or focus on mastering skills rather than your success being ultimately determined by the outcome of your achievements and your performance. Also being goal oriented rather than mastery oriented, right? And there was when we first started sort of talking about these topics and doing a little bit of reading, I actually stumbled across a study. Don't have the reference in my mind at the moment, but can share that with you if you want to link it or whatnot. But a study that looked at performance outcomes in doctors who had a mastery mindset, a performance-focused mindset, or a performance-averse mindset. So mastery mindset, again, being, focused on learning, developing that belief that, you can face challenges, you can make mistakes, you're continually learning and growing. Performance-focused mindset being you have to perform to achieve, mistakes are bad, a lack of performance is bad, and then a performance-averse being similar to the performance mindset, but you're avoiding, situations where you're required to perform because of that fear of not performing, right? And I'm sure you can see where this is going, but the mastery mindset had the best outcomes on performance itself. So not only do we know is the mastery mindset good for your self-belief and confidence, which is a direct, barrier against burning out, but it actually also has better outcomes for performing and achieving as a doctor too, which is, I know everyone's, number one goal.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that mastery mindset then. How do you build a mastery mindset?
I guess that was interesting, even in this study as well. Mastery mindset, it is, I guess it's the main, or at its core, what underpins it is the desirability to learn and grow. And part of that, having flexibility to make mistakes, face setbacks, and start to feel comfortable with that. So being comfortable with imperfection, and as we talked about, perfectionism is a really common theme amongst doctors. So one of the and in this study itself, it actually talked about how transitioning from studying into working as a doctor, that mastery mindset tends to slip naturally. So I'd say that a lot of doctors studying naturally have a mastery mindset, right? They're working towards learning. That's, what you do for a lot. Is that something that you recognise, I guess, even in your career pathway?
Absolutely. But as a medical student, it's easier because the buck doesn't stop with you. And so the consequences of not knowing something or making mistakes are quite different from when you actually start practicing, and you can see why that you can see why that would be a transition point to drop a mastery mindset and very quickly go to a performance mindset, because now that you've got patience.
Yeah, exactly right. So it feels almost logical, right, to get rid of mastery mindset and go to performance mindset, but it's not, because what we know is a mastery mindset is going to lead to better outcomes anyway. It's really just, the pressure that you face from all those factors that you said that are creating some of these cognitive distortions that we have to shift our focus, right? And so, of course, your day-to-day is going to look very different, and the pressures and demands that you face are going to look very, very different. But ultimately, trying to maintain that mastery mindset is going to prevent burnout, but also maintain good, performance outcomes for patients as well.
So mastery is about growth and learning. Like how can a doctor discipline themselves to stay in a mastery mindset and not default? Because I imagine the default is the performance mindset. Under stress we can default back. What do we do? What questions do we ask ourselves to stay in a mastery mindset?
I think that there's a few factors there, and I think it is important, and as we were sort of talking about before, with self-belief, to have realistic self-belief at the same time. So part of that is staying, doing what you're good at, right? When you are working as a doctor, right? You want to do what you're good at, do what you enjoy, staying within your competence, right? And whilst also, and that's going to allow you to have that sense of confidence and self-belief, but whilst also maintaining that mastery mindset of learning, whether that's more about what you enjoy and towards those goals in particular, or about new areas, but not necessarily, spreading yourself thin across those, and or being aware that you may not be as confident in those areas, and not expecting that of yourself, right? And understanding how you can stay connected to, supports and, learning development to allow yourself to grow and master those areas. So I think, a part of that, as I said, is doing what you're good at, what you enjoy, what you're competent in, is really important to come back to. Because I don't know, would you say it's pretty easy to just kind of get thrown into everything, or to step outside of those bounds?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've done a bunch of research in this space about, the number of doctors who, huge proportions who feel like they get asked to work outside their level of competence. So there is a challenge of that with the medicine and healthcare, particularly when there's understaffing. But, listening to you, and we talked about awareness when it came to core beliefs, there's an awareness piece for self-belief too, isn't there? So being aware and actually being mindful of, actually, yes, this is a thing I can do, or this is new to me. So, for example, you might get asked to do, a blood gas on an infant. well, you don't do your first one during a recess, for example. You pick your times when failure is okay. So if you trying to be mindful of, and we never want to fail, but or intubation. You don't do it again in a trauma situation. You do it in theatre where you have anaesthetist, and if you can't get it, they can get it. So just being conscious of it, and when you can do it, having that self-belief, and when you can't do it, having the belief that you can learn how to do it, find a way to do it, and try and be cognizant enough and aware enough to do it in the right situation.
Yeah, exactly right. And I really liked how you said, if you can't do it, you're aware you can learn how to do it. So it's really stepping out of that black and white way of thinking and into that flexible mindset. So I'd say a mastery mindset is a really flexible mindset, but also, as you said, there's a lot of barriers that make it hard to have that complete mastery mindset as a doctor because of the risks and the pressure and the seriousness of what you're required to do. But there are ways to develop that. And in saying that as well, because you said there's different situations you can practice in to develop that mindset before being put under immense pressure. And on that as well, there's using visualization or mental rehearsal is a tool that can be really valuable in developing a mastery mindset and also just generally developing your confidence and self-belief. So visualization or mental rehearsal, it's a tool that's used a lot in sort of sport, performance, in musical arts as well, to start to, I guess, essentially it can be used for a few different reasons, and that can be to visualize the success that of what you're trying to achieve or the skill that you're trying to master. It can be to familiarize yourself with that skill that you're trying to master. It can be to trigger a state of mind. So if there's something that maybe you have made a mistake in the past and having to perform that again is going to cause you a lot of anxiety, being able to enter that state of mind, visualize and draw in some of those physical experiences of the emotion that you might experience in that situation, exposing you to that can help you to pre-plan, it can help you to refocus, and even help with things like, your decision making, and avoidance, I guess, of uncomfortable situations. So, visualization and mental rehearsal is something that can be really, really valuable and a practical tool as well to take away.
It's all interrelated, isn't it? It's that awareness, it's a practice, it's an ongoing thing. And I think what's interesting about this as I listen to you is that whilst we all, there's all these defaults and things, there is also, when we're aware, there is a responsibility to use these tools, isn't there? Because, as you say, this is the best way to get good outcomes for patients. It's also the way to get good outcomes for ourselves. So there is an opportunity with that awareness to better ourselves and to elevate ourselves and to feel better in the process, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. And it's the whole concept of as well of it, unless you're caring about yourself, you actually can't do your job and care for others. And there can be this, whether it's you're predisposed to this sort of mindset because of some of your early core beliefs, or whether that's something that's developed through, the demands of the job and the environments and, the experience of burnout. But there can be a tendency to be very self-sacrificial, right? And to have these unrelenting standards or expectations for yourself, which I think you spoke a bit about with Henry in one of the previous weeks. And because of that, it can be easy to think, all the things that we've spoken about today, or starting to challenge some of these ways of thinking are not important, that you have to keep going, that you just have to work harder, that you just have to do more, that you should just be better, that you should just feel better, that you're failing for feeling burnt out or experiencing cynicism or whatever those barriers are. But yeah, I think that's coming back to, that early point of recognizing the power of your thoughts, and being able to harness those in a positive and helpful way to care for yourself, to then better care for patients as well.
Something I say to people and say to myself when I remember, I'm not to blame, but I am responsible. And so, there's a lot of people find themselves in these situations, and there's all our, the myriad past experiences. 75, 2 and 3 doctors are in burnout. There's a problem with the system. So, may not be to blame, but we are all responsible to take on these tools and to improve ourselves so we can thrive within what is a challenging job.
Coming back to that sort of internal locus of control, and our thoughts and our actions are directly within our control. So many other factors aren't within our control in those environments, as you said, and the system and the pressures. But everything that we've spoken about are things that every individual has the autonomy to start to take action on pretty much straight away. And in saying that, though, it doesn't mean that they're simple or easy. And I think that that's why, I do support a lot of individuals with these sorts of things. So for some people, they might be able to hear this and take it away and start to, have some of those aha moments and integrate it into their practice. And some people, it might make no sense. Some people, they might get it, but just have no idea where to start with it. And that's okay too. And I think that comes back to, I guess, even with leaning on the mastery mindset as well, in terms of, being open to learning and connecting with others and feeling, a sense of engagement with other people or connection. I think it's important to reach out and talk, whether it's peer-to-peer, whether it's to a mentor, whether it's with a psychologist, but just start to identify your supports or the people that can help you, work through these things in particular.
There's a place for the, people listening to apply this. If you're not getting where you need to get to, take another step. This is, there's multiple people and people like yourself who people can reach out to. So, I think this has been great, in terms of, we talked about core beliefs, and, why they exist, when they no longer serve us, how we identify them, why, and then changing them. I think that's, we start to identify a new belief, look for supporting evidence, look for evidence that challenges the old belief, and then it's a process. Keep going, keep going. I love the conversation around self-belief and around a mastery mindset. My daughter's at school's all about growth mindset and fixed mindset. It's the same sort of thing, isn't it? Like, mastery is a growth mindset. A fixed mindset is about performance and outcomes. And that's just such a useful perspective, I think, for doctors to take on board. I mean, we call it the practice of medicine. We don't call it we've nailed it medicine. So this is a practice. We are improving. That's part of who we are. And being able to sort of look for that improvement and, create that belief in what you can do and the belief in your ability to do it has been fantastic. I think it's great. And, again, and I've had a few conversations around in this Well Doctor series, everything is a process. It's all about, building these new habits, building new neural pathways and getting going. Step one is awareness. Step one is maybe being excited about the fact that you've identified something that's not helping you anymore. Great. So now we can actually do something about it. And I think, this has been, to me, it's useful to hear it in such a clear way. And I think to anyone listening, whether you're a med student, whether you're a doctor, I think something to bear in mind is that you are an exceptional person. And whilst disempowering beliefs may have got you there, they don't need to be what takes you, beyond that. And I think, so many doctors fall into the trap of burnout and holding themselves to a standard they can't, meet. These tools, as you've described them, this is the last 2%. This is the little bit that makes all the difference. And I think, what's exciting is how achievable you've made it sound and how achievable it is. You've worked with people. So, Kate, I'll throw it over to you. Are there any final thoughts, anything you'd like to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, and I think what you were just saying before about how it's I guess how your thoughts essentially can get you to a point, but knowing what to do once that they're at that point, and I think from there it's important to notice as well that you don't have to push yourself to that point in order to take this seriously, right? Because I think, again, coming back to that the ways that those core beliefs can work to motivate you, there's often that belief that I guess burnout won't happen to me, or B, who cares about burnout? I've got a job to do and I'm going to just keep doing it until I get there. It only matters once I'm there. And that's, I guess I do tend to see many more people walk, into my door once they've experienced burnout, not necessarily before that. And I would really, I guess, encourage, if you have listened to this and you're not experiencing burnout, or you are a med student or a junior doctor, and you're noticing some of these patterns in your thinking, and it could be in other areas, not even necessarily within your practice. So I'm starting to notice some core beliefs, or noticing maybe these unrelenting standards that you hold for yourself, or noticing that your belief in yourself or your confidence is solely determined on your performance outcomes. Noticing that you really struggle with making mistakes, whatever those things are. I strongly encourage you to start to work through them in the ways that we've spoken about today. It's never too early to take these things seriously, and that's completely a part of developing a mastery mindset, is wanting to master your mindset as well, and recognizing that as an ongoing life learning journey that doesn't have a destination point. So if you can start that process now, in burnout prevention, then you will really start to have these tools, or even just this really good foundation that will make you less likely to experience burnout. At the same time, on the flip side, if you're experiencing burnout, I hope what you can hear from today is that it's not a life sentence. It's a state of being, and it is manageable. And we talked about addressing your thoughts today, and the power of your thoughts in overcoming burnout. But there are a lot of different factors, that I'm sure you'll go into more as well, to respond to burnout. But by having a chat with a psychologist or whoever those supports are around you that you've got, and understanding how your thoughts might be playing a role, or some of those beliefs may be playing a role in perpetuating the burnout that you're experiencing. I've seen a lot of great change, in people who have taken that side of things seriously, and really come out on the other side to have, feel more satisfied and happy in their day-to-day. Because I think, definitely environmental changes in burnout are helpful, but unless you're addressing, some of these factors we've spoken about today, it's just a more, I guess, solid plan to move forward with.
I hope that by listening to this, people have taken on, if they adopt a mastery mindset, if they adopt mind is a journey, and it can be one of the greatest assets I have. It can also be a huge liability, and so this is if you can get ahead of it, that's the best thing you can do. If you're in a situation where you need to make course corrections, you can do it. So, Kate, thank you so much for your time and insight. What's been so useful is, talking to you as a psychologist who works specifically with doctors, because doctors' challenges are quite unique to them. And so I really appreciate your insights, and I hope to anyone listening that they have actually hope, but also combined with practical steps that they can take to either sort of develop a mindset to prevent problems or get themselves out of problems. So thank you so much.